Welcome back. The time is 7 minutes to 9. Still tuned in to Salam Media with me, Salalo Makwidi, on the Wednesday edition of News and Views. And I will be tackling an issue that is very, very well documented, a problem. Something that has become a very, very sore thorn in South Africa's backside, the issue of unemployment. Get a load of this. South Africa's unemployment rate increased in the first quarter of the year. The official unemployment rate now stands at 32.9%, up from 32.1% in the last quarter of 2023. Stats SA says the number of unemployed persons increased by 330,000 to a total of 8.2 million. So, very, very disturbing numbers there. And we'll be speaking to Tahir Maepa. He's a Public Service and Commercial Union Secretary General. And he'll be chatting to us about, the surge behind this, big number of unemployment in South Africa, the implications thereof. And, we've been talking about unemployment for such a long time. Are there any real solutions? Tahir is joining us on StreamYard. Tahir, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. Very pleased to have you join us, even though we are tackling, I think, an issue that has become quite stubborn, in the country. And, very, 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 crazy, scary numbers that we're seeing.
Good morning. Salam alaikum. Thank you for having me. Indeed, this is quite a slap in the face of many South Africans who were pretty much hopeful that we'll be dusting off the effect of COVID, and maybe the economy would upswing a little bit and more jobs are created. But unfortunately, that is not the case. In fact, if you look at these numbers, you'll realize that these numbers are soaring beyond what we went through during the COVID period. And that in itself tells you that we are not getting better. And in fact, we are steadily getting worse by the day. 300,000 more people out of job in this quarter. That is something that the country cannot be able to absorb, especially the state, because you must understand that unfortunately our government is in a crisis mode, in a sense that the collection of revenue is through taxes. And if you have more and more people out of jobs, it means that there's less and less collection insofar as the tax revenue is concerned. And if we can't collect enough tax revenue, that the implications are that we won't be able to maintain the current infrastructure that we have. We won't be able to invest in more infrastructure, more hospitals, more clinics, more schools, more police stations, and employing more civil servants who will be mending those institutions. So this is really bad, and it's something that should bring a lot of concern to all South Africans. Now, something that I've picked up, okay?
No, go ahead.
Something
You can
that
finish
I've
your point.
picked up also in these stats, you will realize that, for instance, Gauteng, which has been on this drive of trying to create jobs through Nasi Spani initiative by the Premier of Gauteng. And you'll see that in terms of a number of newly created positions or jobs in Gauteng, we are sitting at only around 26,000. Now, that in itself paints a very bleak picture, because we have been told or made to believe that there's over 90,000 jobs that have been created in Gauteng. One may argue that yes, those jobs were created, but other sectors lost jobs. That is why we are sitting at 26,000. But you see, that's where the problem is, because you can't say that you are creating jobs whilst you're losing jobs. That's not job creation. You are basically not dealing with the real problems. You are dealing with the symptoms. And also what we are seeing is that there's a contradiction in the whole setup of Nasispani, because of, on one hand, you have the Minister of Finance and the Minister of DPSA and all the bureaucrats claiming that the public service is bloated and the salary bill is too big and all that. And on the other hand, you have this man, Panyaza Sufi, running around creating jobs in the public service. Remember, there was no additional allocation to Gauteng for these jobs. Now the question is that how are they going to be sustained beyond this year? Because
Mm.
it means that if you have increased the numbers, then it means that your budget must also increase. And if you increase only for Gauteng, what about the Eastern Cape? That is I think it currently is the poorest province in the country, where they've lost somewhat 17,000, I mean, jobs in the last quarter, Northwest, for instance, and so forth. So that imbalance is not addressing the major crisis that we have in the country, that there are not new jobs that are being created and we are losing more jobs. And we must brace ourselves for the mining sector that has already indicated that they are going to retrench thousands of more employees. So the situation is going to get worse and worse. It's not going to get better.
Mm. And I think you mentioned a bit about the Premier of Gauteng Panyaza Lesufi and all of these initiatives, Nasispani, Halabalu, which in my opinion I feel like it's a lot of electioneering, because it's honestly not sustainable. And then again, you have national government, who had the presidential youth employment intervention. Again, going back to the point that you made, that the public service sector is so bloated, and there isn't really new budgets that are being made, for all of these jobs that are created. And this will come back to now the conversation and debates that I think a lot of people have when it comes to employment and creating of jobs in the country, about whose responsibility is it, between government and the private sector, and who's which who can we point the finger to? When we look at these stats, we look at the amount of particularly young people that are unemployed, and also, industries. You mentioned that mining, one of those that will be shedding jobs in a not so distant future. So who do we blame for this? Who do we hold accountable, between government and the private sector?
Well, unfortunately, the only blame can be on government. You see, the private sector has never come to us and say, vote for us, then we'll create jobs.
Mm,
Throughout the 30 years of democracy, we have been told that vote for us and then we'll create jobs for you and we'll build houses and we'll build hospitals. So it's a contractual obligation. You see, politics is not a love affair, it's a contract. When politicians or a political party comes to me and you and say that, look, vote for me, and then in return, this is what I'm going to do for you, it's a contract. And that contract is binding on whoever wins those elections. And we were bound by that contract between South Africans and the current government. And unfortunately, they failed dismally. I mean, let's be honest. And I sympathize with people like Panyaza Sufi. Shame. I mean, the guy, he just tasted premiership and he's about to lose it because of things are not going well. And he's trying his best, I believe, giving him the benefit of a doubt. He's trying his best to come up with miracles in a very difficult circumstances. But we can only squarely blame government. And the reason why we should blame government is one. A government, yes, is not supposed to be job creation driver, but it must be an enabler. And how do you enable job creation? You make sure that you attract people with money to come to the country to invest in what you are doing. Now, people will never ever come and invest in a country that is corrupt. One.
mm,
And the current government has failed to deal with corruption. I mean, they are the drivers of corruption. In fact, the trust deficit that we have in this country is so remarkable. There's a piece of legislation now that we are anticipating that the president is going to sign today, the NHI, something that we personally have been advocating for that we do support the NHI. However, now that you have this piece of legislation that is going to address some of the crisis, health crises that we have in the country, do we trust the people who are going to administer this piece
Mm,
of legislation? We don't. Now, that in itself, even poor people are saying, yeah, but this thing is going to be a money making scheme. So people don't even see the benefit because of the trust deficit that exists between us as the people and the government has reached unprecedented levels. And it is because of that, the private sector, which is criminal, completely
mm,
criminal. The private health sector, including the private medical aid scams, are overcharging everybody because of it's a divisive measure to say that those of us who can afford will get a bit of a taste of good medical care, and the rest of the poor people of this country must die in squalor. That's what the
mm,
medical aid scheme they are doing, and that is why they are going to go to court and try and challenge this. And what is even annoying, unbelievable, is that you get parties like Bosa, Action SA, and the DA who are saying that they are going to go against this. Now, these are the people who are going to the very same poor people saying that vote for
mm,
us so that we can provide. But when the government is trying to provide that health care, they come and say that we are not going to support it. So you have a set of political parties who are in a way the same. If you change the ANC with DA, the outcome will be the same. It's not going to address the fundamentals of what the country is facing. So the issue of trust needs to be dealt with. We need a situation where this government can really, really work hard to deal with corruption. And the only way to deal with corruption and to bring confidence and to reduce the trust deficit that we are seeing is to make sure that those who are implicated in criminality, especially in the higher echelon of government, must be dealt with severely. That is the only time that ordinary people will have trust. But until then, unfortunately, in this coming 2 weeks that is remaining before elections, there's no miracles that we can see from this government. We are going to just leave it to fate and the people of this country to decide whether they want the status quo or they want the change that may be worse or better.
mm, mm. And you touched a bit on the inequality, particularly referring it to the NHI and its benefits for the haves and the have-nots, and where the two intertwine. And when it comes to unemployment, I think for the majority of the conversation, we focus on the impact of joblessness to those that are unemployed, and never really look into the implication on those that are employed. And that's why you'll find the middle to the upper class South Africans are almost disconnected to the conversation. They are not the ones that will go out to the streets and protest and be vocal to government because of that divide, that gap between the haves and the have-nots.
Mm.
Maybe if you can just unpack the implications of these stats, the 32.9% of unemployment rate in South Africa, and how it affects those that do have jobs, because it intertwines, it meets somewhere. When you have such a majority unemployed, and only a few having jobs, and not being active in the public discourse, and not challenging the government and the policies thereof, because they're sitting somewhere comfortably in their offices, and enjoying what majority of the country does. And so implications of unemployment on those that are employed.
Yes, Sabelo, what you are raising is quite critical. And as a trade unionist, and we have pretty much a lot of members who are in middle management and those who sort of earn a little bit better. But
Mm,
we've made a survey out of our membership, and one of the things that we've realized that even those who are employed are unable to afford. They live from hand to mouth. Look, the salaries are not growing as they should. They're not growing in terms of the inflation. And remember, the inflation barometer simply says that if your salary grows by inflation percentage, it means that you are simply being put into the same place you were the previous year. It's not
Mm.
like you are getting anything more, because what happens is that during the same period, when you for instance you get that 5.4.7%, 6%, the food basket has grown by 12%.
Mm.
Petrol has grown by another 3%. Electricity has grown by 14%. Now, you'd find that the 4.7% that you got doesn't even cover the costs that you used to cover the previous year. So you are in a worst case scenario. Now, what needs to happen here? Those so-called middle class and the upper echelon of our society, they are in a minority, unfortunately. And they are the ones who are used as a buffer between the poor and the rich. They are protecting the rich unaware, because of they are afraid to lose what they are currently enjoying. So what do? They become an apologist for
Mm.
the current situation that we have in the country. They are the ones who are propelling the downstream of what we are saying. But what they don't realize is that so long as the bottom part of the economy is not propelled up, they themselves, their jobs are not secured, because of you cannot have more people in higher echelon and you don't have the masses on the ground also working. The more you lose the groundsmen, those unskilled laborers and all that, the more you are going to lose supervisors who are supposed to supervise them. And once you lose supervisors, you lose deputy directors and those in the middle management, and ultimately those on a senior level. So the implication goes beyond those at the bottom. You know, there's this quote that I like to mention. I don't know who coined it, but you will find it all over. There's a say that we're going to reach a point where the poor will have nothing else to eat except the rich. And we are
Mm.
there because of the more you have more people who are living below poverty line, they will see the enemy in the eyes of the have nots and the haves. And that's
Mm.
the bottom line. And if we are not careful about that, we are going to be in a very diabolical situation as a nation. And that is why we need to make sure that we stop being apologists for the rich and for the government, because of we believe that we are getting these crumbs that are falling from the master's table.
Mm. And just lastly, before I let you go, we're heading to the elections. You said, you touched a bit on the political parties thereof. Looking at all manifestos, I'm not sure how many you've studied. When they touch to employment, which one looks a bit more valuable? That it looks like it can have a quick turnaround strategy, because the situation is obviously unsustainable. I don't think South Africa can maintain another 2, 3, 4 years of these kind of stats, and just how much they're increasing. Looking at the different political parties, their manifestos, and putting a microscope on job creation, which one seems to make more sense to you, and which one seems to be realistic? Because it's so easy for political parties just throwing numbers, into the air, in hopes, to get votes. But realistically, on the ground, the situation is different.
Look, none of these manifestos are realistic, and I didn't look at I didn't look at all of them. I looked at the main ones. I looked at
Mm.
the parties that I'm inclined to. I looked at the ANC one because of ANC is the ruling party.
Mm.
I didn't waste my time to look at DA and Action SA, because of the reason why I didn't is because of I look at who are the funders. And
Mhm.
if the funders are people like those, I know where the policy position is going to be. So I'm not going to waste my time. But I'm inclined to a position by General Bantu Holomisa. Bantu Holomesa's position is that for this country to move forward, we are going to need a model of government of national unity like we had when we started with our democracy. The problems that we have in this country cannot be resolved by one party. It's impossible. ANC
But
won't be
Tahir,
able to
but Tahir,
resolve
we,
them.
we have those kind of examples in metros and municipalities, and they're
No, but
just not
those are
working.
you see, there's a difference. Those are coalition governments. There's a
Mm.
difference there. The
Yeah.
government of national unity is literally sharing power and policies in order to advance the country. And if you look at the first 5 years, remember the first 5 years of our democracy, ANC was not in power.
Yeah.
It was everybody who was in power. But for some reason, they managed to make sure that at least they stabilized the country. And when Thabo Mbeki came into power after the first 5 years, he was able to deal with the economy much easier because of why? The first 5 years created confidence that we are stable. Currently, there's no stability. So long as there's no stability, the guys with money, they're going to continue holding the money. And it serves them well. Remember that when there's a crisis in any African country, that's where the capitalists make more money.
Mm.
Look at our mines. The reason why you have these zamazamas and are being propelled. This is part of a concerted effort by the mining companies because of they also buy some of these minerals from these zamazamas at a cheaper price. They don't have to pay workers. They don't have to comply with the laws. They don't have to comply with safety issues and all that. All that they do, they let these guys to go in and dig and die and everything, and they buy from them and they sell it elsewhere. Because zamazamas don't have a way of trying to sell minerals outside of the country, outside of the mining houses. It's not possible. So we are seeing a situation where the rule of law is being collapsed because of it suits also capital. So
Mm.
that is why I'm saying if we can get our parties together and say that among these parties, let's get the best minds, let's get the best engineers, best doctors to run these institutions so that we can get ourselves out of this, at least for the next 10 years. And then after that, we can go into this nonsense again.
All right, we're going to leave it there, Tahir. Thank you so much. A really, really insightful conversation. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm going to let you go for now. Thanks so much for giving us your time.
Thank you for the opportunity.
There you go. Tahir Maepa there just chatting to us a bit about the unemployment crisis in South Africa and just how much is getting out of hand. I mean, 32.9% of South Africans are unemployed. And in the recent stats, in the first quarter of the year, almost 300,000 more are added into that. So very, very disturbing there. And Tahir suggesting that to get us out of this mess, because it doesn't seem like there's one political party that can handle it. The ANC has failed dismally, in his opinion, for the last 30 years. He's suggesting, and echoing what Bantu Holomisa, the leader of the UDM, which we interviewed, I think it was last week, Thursday or Friday, Xolani, if I'm not mistaken. And he's saying a government of national unity, like we had in 1994. All political parties get into one and tackle the various social ills and dilapidation and seemingly disarray state of our country. I'm not sure about that. I don't think our democracy and our quote unquote political leaders are mature enough, like the ones in 1994, when you had people with really, really good heads on their shoulders, and we're not selfish, and it was not the interests of their political parties and of individuals, but the interest of the nation, and trying to stabilize us after years and years of apartheid. So I don't know, what do you think, Roland? Government of national unity, all political parties come together, choose one leader, and then we tackle all of the various issues that are affecting South Africa. Do you think that might work? I also don't think it can work. Lolan is shaking his head. I'm also thinking it's not going to work. Considering how even at local municipality, even in metros, we're seeing what could closely resemble a government of national unity, coalitions falling down, breaking apart. City of Johannesburg, Tshwane, Ekurhuleni, coalitions there are failing and are a mess. So imagine that. Imagine taking that and putting it into national government and the implications that can be. So I don't know. But it's definitely going to be interesting times going forward. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, 76 years of the Nakba. We're commemorating 76 years of the Nakba, and I will be speaking to Moshfika Botha, who's an activist, about from an activist point of view. From a laywoman's point of view, why is it so important now more than ever to commemorate the Nakba. More on that after this.
Ah, the kitchen, the heart of the home, where memories are made and celebrated. Our go-to place for those